If you're listening to this night, good choice. This season always belong to the dark hours anyway. There's something about nighttime that makes strange questions feel reasonable, like wondering who put the moon in the sky, or why some stories only make sense when you're half awake, or why your brain suddenly decides now is the perfect time to remember something from 10 years ago. Tonight is a little different though. This is the last night of 12 weird nights. Not the dramatic kind of last night. No thunder, no ominous music, no everything fades to black moment. More like the end of a really good conversation where no one actually wants to leave. But we're all aware it's getting late. So if you're curled up in a bed, pacing your room on a quiet commute, or just hiding from the world for a few minutes, welcome. You're exactly where you need to be. I'm glad you're here for this one. Hello, and welcome back to Layered. It's me again, Jane, and I'm really glad you're here because tonight isn't just another episode. This is night 12, the final night of 12 Year Nights. There's a small paradox in that actually. We're wrapping up a season right at the start of the year, closing a door while another one is already creaking open. But somehow that feels very on brand for this show. We've spent an entire season sitting with strange timings and questions that don't arrive in order. This mini series was never meant to be rushed though. It was designed like a set of bedtime stories for the curious, one night at a time, wandering through the odd ideas, forgotten knowledge, scientific curiosities, and the quiet spaces in between. So tonight isn't about cramming in one last mystery. It's about pausing, looking back at where our curiosity wandered, and saying a proper thank you for listening, for staying curious, and for choosing to spend your nights here with me. Let's take this last night slowly. When I look back at the season, what surprises me is how naturally our curiosity learned to wander. We began by looking up toward the moon, the stars, and the stories our ancestors once used to make a sense of the sky. We talk about ancient constellations, forgotten star maps, how the night sky wasn't just something to admire, but something to live by. The stars weren't distant backdrops, they were calendars, compasses, and quiet storytellers. Then, somewhere along the way, our gaze is slowly turned inward. We move from the cosmos to the mind, from celestial maps to mental ones. We explored how thought can exist without a brain, how memory builds invisible palaces inside us, how sound and vibration might shape the way we feel, and how dreams turn sleep into a kind of nightly portal to question what consciousness really is and how much of reality might be shaped by perception. And of course, we didn't stay entirely in the rational world. We stepped into folklore and liminal spaces. Ghost months, dancing lights, trickster spirits, fairy circles, and stories that sit right at the edge of belief. Across cultures, these tales had a common thread. They weren't just meant to scare us, they were warnings, metaphors, and reminders to stay grounded, respectful, and aware of the spaces we pass through. There were also quieter, heavier moments: lost libraries, sinking cities, strange scientific discoveries, and the unsettling feeling that knowledge can disappear as easily as it's created. Those stories lingered, at least for me. They reminded me how fragile memory is: personal, cultural, and collective, and how easily things slip through the cracks if no one bothers to remember them. Looking back now, this season wasn't really about separate topics at all. It was about thresholds between night and day, between science and myth, between what we know and what we're still trying to understand. And somehow, night after night, our curiosity kept finding its way through time. Behind every episode this season, there was a moment where I was simply genuinely fascinated. I especially love researching the Mind Beyond Matter series. Those topics pulled me in deeper than I expected. I found myself lingering on ideas like tulpas and egregores, how thoughts can take on shared form, and how reality itself might be more flexible than we assume. That question of what reality really is stayed with me long after the research ended. At the same time, episodes like Minds Without Brains, the quiet scientific oddities of the night, and the unusual science discoveries reminded me why I enjoy learning so much. There's a particular kind of joy in realizing that the world is far stranger and far more imaginative than we're usually told. In many ways, this season wasn't just for you. I was discovering these things for myself as well. But behind the mic, there were struggles as well. There were bouts of idea fatigue, moments of overthinking, a constant question of whether I was keeping up or falling behind. And then there was social media. I love connecting with listeners, but I'm rarely online in the way content creation seems to demand. Wanting genuine connection without constantly being on is a tension I'm still learning how to navigate. And there's the truth about the season finale. The season was meant to come out before 2026, but the holidays arrived, real life got busy, and before I knew it, I hadn't opened my laptop for almost a month. And strangely enough, I don't regret it. The time was spent with my family, resting, laughing, and just being present and enjoying the moment. I don't want to be hard on myself for that. Instead of punishing myself for missing a deadline, it taught me something quieter and more useful: to plan better next time and to leave space for living in between creating. What I am deeply thankful for is this. Even when I went a little MIA over the past few weeks, you didn't stop listening. You stayed, you returned, and that means more than perfectly timed uploads ever could. So if there's something the season really reinforced for me, it's this. No matter how delayed, stalled, or uncertain I feel, the most important thing is simply to show up. Not perfectly, not loudly, just honestly. Because curiosity doesn't disappear when you pause, it just waits. And I'll be honest here. There are moments when I wonder if anyone is really listening, if the things I create here matter to anyone beyond myself. And then I remember that a few of you are. Some of you found this show intentionally, others may have stumbled into it by accident. Either way, I'm grateful, truly. Knowing that even a small number of people choose to stay, to listen, to return, it means more than I can easily explain. These stories kept my sense of wonder alive. They helped my curiosity keep going, even when they send out an insecurity were louder than inspiration. And if any of these stories resonated with you, if something lingered, comforted, or quietly stayed with you, it tells me that somewhere out there, there are people like me too, gentle, curious, reflective souls trying to make sense of the world in their own way. Because while I do believe this is an incredible time to be alive, I also feel the weight of it. The speed of technology, the endless noise, the constant demand to react, perform, and keep up, especially online, can be exhausting for old souls, for gentle minds, for people who like to think slowly and feel deeply. All that clutter can be overwhelming. That's where night stories come in. Night stories don't rush you, they don't demand anything from you. They keep you company. They offer comfort through familiarity, meaning through reflection, and companionship through shared curiosity. Even when you're listening alone, you're not really alone. There's a voice keeping you company, a story unfolding beside you, a reminder that someone else is wondering about the same strange things. I've shared this before on one episode or maybe in a Substack post. But I started all of this because I wanted to keep the magic alive. The magic I felt as a kid, listening to my grandfather's strange tales and my father's curious history stories. Those moments shaped me more than I realized at that time. And I still want to be the curator of stories, the keeper of small wonders. If even one of these episodes helps spark that same sense of curiosity or quiet awe in someone else, then this space has already done what it was meant to do. If you ever ask me what my favorite episode this season was, I'd probably say the one on Philippine ethnoastronomy without hesitation. There's something deeply fascinating about how our ancestors understood the sky. The stars weren't abstract science to them. They were actually tools. They were stories and guides for living. It almost feels like magic now. Quiet, precise magic that has been slowly buried under time. And honestly, we're lucky that people like late Dr. Ambrosio devoted their lives into digging that knowledge back up before it disappeared entirely. And while I was researching that episode, I had one of those small world moments. I found out that one of my professors had actually worked with him, and it felt surreal. Like the past briefly brushing against the present. Moments like that made the research feel alive, not just academic. I do wish this kind of knowledge were taught earlier, especially in grade schools or high schools. Because if we don't keep these stories alive, who will, right? And while our education system still has a lot of learning and recalibrating to do, I try to hold on to a brighter side of things. The fact that these roots still exist, waiting to be rediscovered. And that's where my mini novel, The Crossing, came from. It grew out of the same curiosity about memory, thresholds, forgotten knowledge, and what happens when you choose to step into the unknown. It's a small interactive mini novel where your choices guide the journey. And instead of handing you a neat final answer, the story eventually steps back and lets you finish it. The ending is intentionally open. The last crossing isn't written for you, it's something you arrive at your own. It's not about winning or unlocking a perfect conclusion. It's more like being given the final lantern and deciding where to shine the light. A quiet, strange little world where you can wander through at your own pace and live with your own interpretation in hand. And yes, it's not free. I'm not rich, but I'm also not greedy, so I put a small price on it. Think of it as less paywall and more symbolic crossing fee. A tiny exchange, so we both win. You get a story to explore, and I get to keep making strange things like this. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, I'll leave the link for you. No pressure, just an open door waiting if you ever feel like crossing over. And now we're almost at the end of the season. This part, I want to read a thank you letter to you, my dear listener. To the curious mind who choose to listen and choose to stay, thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing this small, weird corner of the internet, even with millions of louder, shinier things competing for your attention. Thank you for listening alone late at night, during long commutes, quiet afternoons, or moments when you just needed a voice to keep you company. I know I've talked too much at times. I've mispronounced words, stuttered, paused awkwardly, or said something that barely made sense. And yet you stayed. It chose me anyway. I'm very much a work in progress, but this journey with you, diving into the unknown, the strange, and the quietly weird, has been genuinely joyful. I started this season without a clear plan for how I'd get through it, but when I scroll back through all the episodes now, I feel something unexpected. A quiet kind of pride. Despite the overthinking, despite the procrastination, I built something. I created a collection, a curation of ideas, stories, and somehow it exists now. It's real. And I'll be honest, I'm still overthinking what the next season will look like or when it will arrive. But that's okay. Stories don't always reveal themselves on a schedule. For now, all you need to do is keep your notifications on and I'll find my way back to you for another curious one. And before we turn out the lights completely, there's just one last thought I'd like to leave with. As a kid, I was often called the weird one, the one whose interests wandered far beyond textbook and repetitive classroom lessons, while others memorized. I wandered through our old set of encyclopedias at home, page by page, topic by topic, reading the same entries because access to information wasn't endless back then. I saved up for books whenever I could. I loved the ones titled I Wonder Why. I gravitated toward nonfiction, toward questions without easy answers, and toward stories that bent the mind just enough to make reality feel less rigid. I used to write too, and then life happened. Growing up got busy, practical, loud. Writing was quietly set aside, like something meant for later. I've made life choices that don't always make sense to people. I've stayed intensely introverted, maybe even more so as an adult. I still don't fit the norm. And sometimes, yeah, I still try to blend in, but I've learned not to fully conform. And being weird was never the problem, it was the clue. It meant I noticed different things, asked different questions, listened more than I spoke. So if you're listening to this and you've ever felt out of place, too quiet, too curious, too slow for a world that rewards noise, this space is for you. You don't have to shrink your interest to survive. You don't have to abandon your wonder to be taken seriously. You don't have to become louder to matter. Curiosity is not a flaw. Gentleness is not weakness. And choosing depth in a shallow world is an act of quiet courage. So wherever you are tonight, you don't have to figure everything out. You don't have to explain your interests. You don't have to justify your quiet, your curiosity, or the way your mind wanders when the world feels too loud. It's enough to know that somewhere along the way, you kept that small, strange spark alive. If this season kept you company, even briefly, then that's already something worth holding on to. These stories don't end here. They linger, they wait, they settle quietly, like thoughts that only show up when the lights are low. So for now, let this be a pause, a breath, a gentle dreaming. Thank you for spending these nights with me, for listening, for wondering, for staying. This has been Lil Weird. Good night, dear weird one. Until the curious night.